So continuing on with this discussion on inclusion and the strength in our workforce by creating a respectful and inclusive community in our workspace, we are now going to have a panel discussion. And I know our moderator is very prepared, so I'm only just going to invite those to the stage when I call your names. Come on up, and we have Tanya, or is it Tanya? Tanya, okay, Tanya Hawco, Director of Strategic Programs and Partnerships with Equiforce, Alison Leigh, with GEMTEC Consulting Engineers and Geoscientists, a Director of WIM-NL, Carolyn, Wakeham, CEO of NLOWE, Laura Dawe, founder of WIM-NL, and Leigh Wall, Industry Partner Specialist with OAWA? OAWA? Do we say it out loud? Okay. Perfect. Yeah, I'll bring you guys water bottles. Yes. Okay.
Yep, I think they're working.
Test?
Yep, we're good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sticking around. It's later in the day, and we're so happy to be here. I have a fantastic group of panelists here with me today. So in full disclosure, we met this morning, and we figured out that we need about 16 hours to kind of talk through everything that we want to talk through. So I'm not sure what your evening plans are, but we'll certainly try to keep this on time. So folks, I know we mentioned that we would do introductions just really quickly, but I know that Alexandra has done that, so maybe just a first name before you speak again, and that might do the trick for us all. So let me get my questions. All right, let's get going. So I'll keep an eye on time, obviously, but we have a lot to talk about today. So we have been talking about workplace inclusion for a really long time. And so for many of us that we are panelists or have either worked in the sector or been adjacent to the sector or certainly working, supporting women who are either in the sector or adjacent to the sector. So certainly a lot of expertise here. And we recognize that we have been talking about workplace inclusion for a really long time. And so from your perspective, what do you say to people who say to you, why are we still talking about this? Start with Laura?
Yeah. So the response I had this morning was, we should never stop talking about this. And to me, it's as important as all the other conversations that we're having. This is a conversation around our people, and it's investing in your most important resource. So we can't ever stop talking about it. It's not just about inclusion or hiring more women or all of these things. It's about making sure that your people have the psychological safety and the ability to bring their whole authentic self to work. And that's when you're going to get the most out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Leigh, you have anything to add to that? I don't think so.
No. I wish we didn't have to talk about it. I wish everything was just inclusive and everything was all good. But we still have to talk about it because the people that really need to be at the table having the conversation oftentimes are not. Yep. So we keep talking in hopes that they will listen and join. A lot of times when we go to conferences or we have panels or we gather in rooms, it is folks like us who work in inclusion, who care about it, who are already on board. And the people who aren't are the ones who get up and leave the room before panels like this start. And we go to conferences where the technical panels are packed and it's standing room only, and then there's a lovely diversity panel and the room clears out. And those are the people who will come up to us and say, oh, we need more women in the mining industry, but then they don't actually take any meaningful action to make it an inclusive place. So until everyone who needs to listen listens, we're gonna keep talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of like I said, it's preaching to the choir lots of times and then trying to really spread the message to folks who might not see it as a priority day to day. So from your experiences then, when we talk about respectful and inclusive workplaces, and we just heard, a bit of a transition, I think, language from DEI or EDI into respectful and inclusive workplaces. Those are big thematic theme. We could talk about that, but what does it actually look like when you go to work every day? Any reflections on what that means day to day? And what are some of the things that make people, regardless if they're women or they're newcomers, whatever it is, what are those everyday actions that might make you feel supported? And we'll start with Alison.
Thank you. So I guess I can speak to it kind of from the positions that I've been in. I've been on small teams, often exploration teams, so I'm in core sheds. We tend to have a wide variety of people that are in those workplaces, and you spend a lot of time with each other. So they're very close-knit, sometimes maybe too close-knit. You're spending your time on rotation with these people, you're away from home, et cetera. And so I think it's really critical in these settings to make sure that people feel included and they feel heard. Retention is a huge issue with rotational work, as we all know. Anyone in this room knows that. I can give an example. I wouldn't recommend just kind of walking up to an office and doing this, but for example, we had, age groups from people in their 20s all the way up to their 60s, approaching retirement, and we're spending 12 hours a day together every day. Our older employees, they loved going on Google Maps and looking at people's houses. They wanted to see where everyone lived, I'm not recommending that anyone ask someone to show you.
Kind of weird and
It is
creepy,
kind of weird,
okay.
but this was what they do. This is how they do for fun.
Yeah.
And so we had an employee who was from a different country, and he was very quiet, and he didn't speak up a whole lot. And I was like, maybe we should go see your house on Google Maps one morning, something like that. Just bringing people into the loop, whatever that looks like, letting people show up and participate, and trying to make it interesting for everyone. And it allows people to come out of their shell and kind of realize their potential, I think, in the team. I don't advocate for telling people to, showing people your house on Google. I just mean in this particular setting, that worked well. And
It
I think
worked well.
you have to tailor to each workplace, right? So that's just an example.
Yeah, absolutely. Carolyn, what do you think on that one?
So this mic still doesn't work? Yeah. So I think, the statistics that were presented really are telling of, the gaps that exist in the sector. And I would say it's not just mining. To have less than 20% of the workforce, but 50% of your population. And so for those of you who don't know, I work with the Newfoundland and Labrador Organization of Women Entrepreneurs. So we support women business owners throughout the province in all sectors. I guess my take or my position here, I'm coming at it from a little bit of a different angle, not so much as workforce retention, but also for supporting women business owners to get into the supply chain. So this is, there's an untapped opportunity there. So there's, Newfoundland and Labrador has the second highest percentage of private women-owned businesses, and they employ 12,000 people and contribute over $330 million in wages. So just imagine if that percentage was higher. And they're also very highly educated. So you're looking at people with minimum, bachelor's degrees, PhDs, masters. So we're really not tapping into that resource.
Yeah, those numbers were pretty staggering, right? When we look at just how many people we need, and then thinking about if we get them, that we're going to lose them potentially because of the experiences that they have in our workplaces. I mean, obviously, you're never going to keep everybody. There's situations beyond control, but to know that it was within your control, it was part of your workplace culture, that's a whole nother kettle of fish, right? So when we talk about that, I guess that's the segue into retention, because retention is so important. And what role do you think individual coworkers and teams play? Because we can look at it from a strategic level, policy level, wages, compensation, all of those things. And then we can look at it more at a micro level. So in terms of what role every one of us can play in terms of creating that respectful and safe workplace. And I think we'll start Alison or Leigh, either.
Okay, yeah, so I guess there's two parts to retention, I think. It's first of all, you have to lead people into the field. So there's even introducing people into the sector. So that's a huge thing, and that's part of what I do with WIM-NL. We run the Student Summer Employment Program, which is called SEP, and that's in order to show people what industries are out there, what different professional expertise looks like in the workplace. From a retention side, like I hear you, because a lot of this gets tossed around at a corporate level. It's in a slide deck. It's in like a big offsite meeting, and you're talking about diversity and how it's important. But realistically, the changes are made in the core shack or at the dinner table when everyone sits together and can talk about their day. It's about making people feel supported on the micro level, like in your workplace, as opposed to always having it as kind of an overarching theme. Of course, you know, I think you get both together. But a lot of the time, I think it feels a bit removed when you're the one who's kind of handling the team and you want to make sure people feel included. You really do have to take matters into your own hands and ensure that people feel supported. Most of the people that you're going to interact with, like in my world, are already technically very strong. But if you want to get the most out of someone's technical expertise, they have to feel supported. So that's kind of a critical piece for me, I think, retention-wise.
Yeah, that's a really valid point, because we hire people, we recognize all of their professional credentials and what they bring to the table. But you're right, in order to really be fully productive and be able to show up and even willing to put your new ideas out there and take that risk, you have to feel pretty safe in your workplace.
So I'm with the Office to Advance Women Apprentices, Newfoundland and Labrador. So the acronym there when they did the introductions, OAWA, OAWA. So we support women in underrepresented Red Seal skill trades, and one of our big focuses is mentorship. And I think that goes beyond just apprenticeships. It's also, you know, for engineers, for people in office positions, whatever the position is in mining. I think mentorship is so important and so overlooked, and something that we can all do individually. Obviously, there's like very formal mentorships if you are doing an apprenticeship, but then there's also informal mentorship. And so understanding how you can mentor someone that you're working with, how you can support them, the social part of it that you talked about is so important, but also remembering that you were once in that person's shoes. You were once the new person on the job, or you were once the new graduate. You know, maybe you weren't at one time the only woman, but, you know, looking at a person's situation and kind of taking a step back and reflecting, like, what challenges could this person be facing, whether it be that they're the only female or that they're a new Canadian or something like that. And really offering them mentorship, whether it be formal or informal. And if you see the need for more formal mentorship, talking to your organization, your employer about training, we offer mentorship training through OAWA. So, you know, a little pitch there, that's something that you can take advantage of. But yeah, mentoring people, helping them to learn and to grow and to, you know, that's, for me, one of the biggest parts of retention. Like, we see so many women who don't complete their trade because they come out of their program like feeling really inspired and prepared, and they go on the job and they get no support or mentorship, and they don't understand that that's maybe situational and not, you know, they think that's the industry, and they give up.
Yeah. I think the informal mentoring piece is almost as important, because you have somebody who's going to show you how to do your job and, you know, where to find the things you need and where to get your tools and all that stuff. But somebody who's going to hold your hand when you go in the lunchroom and teach you where to go. Somebody who's going to make sure that you are not out walking along the production floor crying to yourself every day, because I've heard those stories, and it breaks my heart to think that that's where people are. But it's as easy as somebody who's going to be your friend on day one. And they're just looking out for you and making sure that you're not sat alone at the lunch table. So it makes a huge difference for sure.
I do support this moving away from the language around EDI and more inclusivity and making it the playing field level, because I know from the women entrepreneurs that we work with, that we spoken to, that have had success and built successful companies in these sectors, that no one is looking for an unfair advantage.
Right.
They just want a level playing field, but there are barriers to getting in these networks, to accessing the opportunities. So but that's all we need. We just need to create that level playing field for everyone.
Yeah. And those barriers are not just for women.
No,
they're for a lot of different people.
Absolutely.
And having that support for people at all different levels and races and genders and sexual orientation, all of that stuff is a huge deal.
We talked about that this morning, about when people think about inclusion or they think about diversity, they think about women, they think about immigrants. But you can work in an organization with all white men from Newfoundland and you have diversity. Someone is a parent, someone is from rural Newfoundland, someone's from a city, someone is gay. Like, just because you have these similarities on paper doesn't mean you aren't a diverse population. And when you look, don't quote me on this statistic, but I think something like 60% of jobs that exist today didn't 80 years ago. So when we look at the things that, like workplace culture 80 years ago and the way things were when it was like all men on a work site or something, men probably tolerated things they weren't happy to tolerate because they didn't really have any other choice. And so people nowadays, they do. And so when you're looking at how you treat people and make them feel included, it isn't just people that are different than you. It's people that are the same as you as well, like other men.
Yeah, and those are all such good points and I think it all centers back to the point that you have to be aware, because I just think about sometimes, you go to work, you have a million things to do, tasks to do, your inbox is full, the meetings are full, and so being aware though that focusing a little bit on how other people are doing in your workplace and maybe who is new or who possibly could not feel included or who might need a few minutes of your time is part of the role. And if you think about, oh, I've got too much on my plate, well, you're probably going to have a lot more on your plate when a couple of your coworkers leave because, this wasn't a really great place for them and they decided to go on elsewhere. So when we circle back to the retention piece, it makes sense that we're trying to support each other, and it's everybody, right? So it affects everybody positively when we can create these workspaces that are safe and respectful, and it's not an othering situation where other people need safe and respectful workplaces. We kind of all need that, and we do our best when we feel safe and supported in our workplaces and in other areas of our life as well. And it is a perfect segue because we talked about this idea of diversity and that people experience the same workplace differently. And so, I might be in my workplace and I might think it's fantastic and it's so inclusive and oh my gosh, what do you mean we're the most welcoming? But it's a recognition that whether it's a woman or someone who's neurodiverse or a newcomer, that different folks can experience the same place, the same workplace very, very differently. Experiences aren't the same, not everything is visible. And so just to elaborate on that, really interested to hear, what do you think that means when we talk about respectful workplaces and inclusion, just to touch on that? I think I had Alison and Carolyn earmarked for this one.
That's a mouthful. Okay,
Yeah.
let me collect my thoughts. So, a couple of things. I'll touch on, again, women that we support, and that's Indigenous women, that's newcomer women,
Right.
that's women in rural communities, and so what we see, and on a daily basis, is women who are leaving employment or not returning to employment because and seeking entrepreneurship as a viable option because the workplace that they came from just cannot support their work-life balance, what their caregiver, travel, whatever those circumstances are. So these are people who are starting businesses, taking on the risk of entrepreneurship as well, but still showing up in these sectors as highly skilled people, whether that could be in occupational health and safety, project management, finance, whatever. So there's that piece of it that we have to address. And then I forgot the rest of your question.
You did a great job. We were talking about just inclusion and how that looks very differently. So a really intersectional lens that we're all working in different levels of diversity, and every one of us has different layers to our identity and how that affects how we show up at work.
Yeah, and I guess you know, different personalities are going to interact with your workplace differently, right?
course.
So I think it's trying to create a space and a culture that's safe so that people from all different types of personalities can mesh together. In, like, I speak about this from, you know, from the exploration side mostly, because that's where the majority of my time has been spent. But like, it's very production focused. Like, everyone has a common goal at the end of the day to get so much work done in that day. And you know, like, different types of workplaces have different kinds of deliverables, but ultimately working together towards a common goal is like the key part of what we're doing every day when we show up to our job, right? And figuring out how people interact with that is like a critical piece of helping them feel supported, right? So you might have someone who's more quiet and they kind of take it in. They're gonna like do their work in a different pace.
Right.
They're gonna do it in a different order than you. And I think that there's a lot of beauty in all the differences between all the coworkers like doing a common goal. And it's important to just make sure that just because someone doesn't show up to work the way that you do, that they don't get left out of the conversations. Because especially from my own personal experience, I find that having more opinions is always helpful. Having a lot of feedback flying around is helpful. And especially when we're doing things like targeting like a mineral resource, you know, you need to think about that from every angle. So you really do want everyone's opinion on your team. And yeah, to me, it all comes down to a workplace culture and just getting to know people and making sure people feel supported to be themselves.
And again, like having the access to opportunities, whether it be mentorship or training, are, you know, people being treated the same? Because how they show up to work looks different than how maybe I would show up, how a newcomer would show up, or an Indigenous person. So I think those things have to be recognized, and showing that, you know, everybody's getting the same access to whatever supports there are in a company.
Another piece that's come up for me a few times is even just how you communicate to people. Sometimes you need to tailor that to the person. I had a guy working with me, and he was later diagnosed with ADHD in like his 30s. And he was like, honestly, you send out an email with all of this information. He's like, I'm looking at it, I'm reading the shortest paragraph. And if that catches my attention, I might read some more. But it's just about kind of trying to capture that as well, because if you've got stuff in a meeting or in an email or whatever that you want to communicate to everybody, you really need to be able to tailor that so that everybody gets all the information. And that's a really important piece too. It's as important as getting their feedback, is actually being able to communicate with them as well.
Yeah. I know at Equiforce, one of the services that we offer through our employer services side is we actually work with employers, and not me, but our research services side of the team are able to go in and do really detailed and comprehensive and confidential workplace culture and inclusion surveys. And I always think, you know, measurement is it, right? Like, I don't think I have to convince anybody here about the importance of data. So how do you know how people are experiencing your workplace unless you ask them, unless you measure it, and unless you do it in a way that people actually feel safe to disclose? So, you know, many employers may talk about, yeah, no problems, we're good. And then they got a survey back, and, you know, maybe 50% have said, yeah, I felt disrespected at work, or I've experienced harassment at work. And it's like, uh-oh, we got to do something. We didn't know that. Because not every time is somebody going to go through, say, a formal complaint process. Sometimes people just leave, or, you know, the sick leave comes up, the absenteeism, all of that. So I'll do a plug, of course, for the measurement side of things. There are ways that we can measure this data. We can take a real good look at what's going on in our workplaces. And of course, once you have the data, you can then put in some actionable steps to see if you can get your numbers up and improve how people are experiencing your workplace. So that's my shameless plug for today, for sure.
It's a very important plug.
Thanks. All right. So in terms of success, because we know a lot of employers are doing fantastic work in this area, when you've seen like really practical things, and I mean, we've had talks about, like, we're still talking about bathrooms like a lot, right? So if we talk about practical things that employers can do to really have a real impact on inclusion, what do you think? Do you have any ideas, or what have you seen that just moves the dial forward?
I've got one right out of the gate that we talked about this morning. PPE. having PPE that fits. I'm 5'2". Like, I cannot wear, unisex PPE does not fit me. It's never gonna fit me. I need specific tailored clothing. Like, that is a huge one. There's companies out there that are run by women, like Cover Gals. There's a couple of really cool companies you can work with. Most sites now are starting to gravitate towards it. But in one situation, I was trying to get PPE that fit, and I ended up having to join a weekly meeting to talk about women's PPE procurement. So I was already in probably 20 or 30 hours of meetings a week on a 12-hour day schedule. So like, just, can we make it accessible? You know what I mean? It was, that's a tough one for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and that burden kind of coming
The
in.
burden coming at, yeah.
And not having to ask for that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the thing. So many people, back to your point about doing the survey, finding out, like, a lot of people don't feel comfortable coming forward and asking for things.
Right.
Especially if you are the only woman or whatever the case may be. Like, I don't want to be difficult. Everybody else is happy with what we have. I don't want to be the one that has to go and say, can I have this? Can I have that? So people don't ask, and they just suffer silently. But it's like very simple things like feminine hygiene products available in a bathroom. Like, if you have people who have periods, then you should have period products. And, we've heard the most ridiculous stories like, well, it's locked in a drawer in somebody's office and you have to go ask for it. That's what I want to do in the middle of my workday, is go find my boss and then go down a hallway. Like, I don't think so. That's not a good use of anyone's time. And people have said things like, well, if we leave it in the bathroom, people take it. If someone's taking it, it's because they need it. You know what I mean? So maybe like invest in those things for your employees. So,
Was it you, Tanya, that said, if you have to keep it behind the lock and key because people are stealing it, maybe you need to look at your employee pay wages if they can't afford to buy their own?
Just to, maybe a hint, our pre-discussion was a little spirited, so.
It was a little spicy.
It got a little spicy, yeah. We tamed it down for y'all folks, but exactly, if people are feeling the need to steal period products, yeah, I agree.
And like,
Look at
talk
your
about
wages.
period products. I think it's something that some people are so uncomfortable with. Like, my father has 3 daughters. Like, you can ask him anything about periods. He has way more conversations than he would like about the female reproductive system. But it's part of life, and that's it, right? So it's just like being able to provide things that people need without, and you don't know what you don't know. Like, obviously you don't know someone needs something if they don't ask for it, but that's why you can work with organizations like Equiforce to do those surveys, and your employees can anonymously share that information and get the support they need, and you can get the information you need to support them.
It takes a little bit of the burden off your employees too, for having to come forward and have to sit in meetings after meetings. Like, let the other people advocate for that and make it happen.
Yeah, and like, one thing I think this, and maybe our spirited discussion this morning kind of shed light on for me too, that's important, is it's really important for us to build networks where we can kind of discuss these things without it having to be a formalized company process. You know what I mean? Like, you need to build these support systems so that you can talk about these things freely and you feel safe doing so. Which is now my turn to put in my plug for WIM-NL. So that's part of our student summer employment program too. So we try to get our students to build a network with each other so that when they enter the workforce, they're gonna have like-minded peers that they already know, that they maybe weren't in the same school as or what have you, so that, women in our workplaces can build up these networks and they have people to lean on.
And then we build up Women in Mining Newfoundland so that once they're in the workforce, they continue to grow those networks. And, we're all grown-ups and we can all still get together and talk about our periods.
No, I mean, it's a valid point, right? The idea that we need networks, that we need people around us, and how can our employers support in that? So employee resource groups are one way. We all know different people have different experiences with those groups. Sometimes it become very administrative, but having the opportunity, I think, also to have input into what the groups are going to focus on and what, how you're going to come together is really important, because I mean, not many of us like to go to a committee and be told exactly what we're going to talk about, what we're going to do, and feel like we don't really have a say in exactly how it's going to meet our own needs and why we should be there. So certainly employee resource groups have been around for a really long time, and they're one way that folks can at least find an informal mechanism to come together.
Yeah, and if you don't have the capacity to have a committee or whatever in your organization, you can reach out to organizations like ours, like WIM-NL and like Women in Mining and the Office to Advance Women Apprentices and things like that. Like we have one commercial construction company, every time they hire a woman, they say, do you know about the Office to Advance Women Apprentices? They're a really great organization. There's support they can offer you because we can support them with things that their organization probably doesn't have the capacity, but they want to make sure that they have that support because they want that retention. They don't want a woman to leave because she doesn't have something she needs or she doesn't feel supported. And we have that relationship with them where we can kind of confidentially support them to have the right supports.
And I would argue that that seems so simple, right? It's just a quick conversation in your onboarding package, but look at the impact that it can have, and there's so many employers who could add that in as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't cost anything. Like we are provincially funded. All the supports we give to tradeswomen and to employers are of no charge to you. Like we get that through funding, and if we want to continue to have that funding, then we need to have these relationships and that support. So it is a very symbiotic relationship in that way.
Yeah. So I'm just going to check my time. We're doing pretty good. There's a lot of good things happening, right? We've heard it all throughout the conference. What's one thing that gives you optimism when you think about the future of inclusion and respectful workplaces, particularly within mining and exploration? What's one thing that gives you a sense of optimism when it comes to inclusion?
I think it kind of comes right back to the beginning, right? We're still talking about it. We're still here. You're not going to break us down. we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep having the conversations, and every little bit. I think I sat in on the mayor workshop yesterday afternoon, and there was one gentleman, and he was kind of asking some different questions. We're like, you know what? I think this is a really good conversation to be having with this person. And at one point, you actually saw the light bulb. Like he had that aha moment and was like, okay, I'm starting to get it. I got a little bit more. So every time we get a little bit more and you see more of those light bulbs and you see more people sitting in on the workshops that the last conference, maybe they didn't bother. And so the more and more people you get and the more conversations you have, we're moving the needle every little bit.
Yeah.
I'm like maybe cautiously optimistic, but just seeing the numbers there of knowing like what the requirements are going to be, and like there's untapped resources, which I think was a really good point from the talks, that the keynote, right? I think, yeah, there's something to that, like we're going to have no choice, which maybe isn't the most optimistic statement, but it pays to engage everyone. It pays to build diverse workforces, and companies obviously are understanding that because you're seeing a shift. I think we talked about the differences in the last 10 years that we can see at a conference like this. And that does feel good, that it feels like we're going in the right direction. We're still having the conversation. And yeah, it seems there's no other choice either, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those stats don't lie.
The stats don't seem to lie, so.
Yeah.
So a couple of things. Newfoundland and Labrador has a history and a track record now of benefits agreements. And we are seeing the impact of those. And like compared to other provinces in the country, Newfoundland and Labrador, while not great, but well above other provinces in terms of representation in the workforce, in the supply chain. So we can still build on that. Like as new opportunities and new projects are coming up, like that's why organizations like NLOWE and OAWA, Equiforce, we're here and we contribute to that. So we have the numbers to back that up to, improve those stats. The second piece is young people. So while those numbers were very stark about, young people being interested in the workforce, the first speaker talked about it's going to be a generational shift. So now is the time that we have to get in front of those younger people, and I know that WISE has excellent programs. There's STEM for girls. There's so many, like getting into the schools, but having those conversations and getting those programs and just kind of changing that mindset, we will have, that generational shift, please, God.
Yeah, good point. The program that you mentioned, STEM for Girls, of course, is our charitable arm, and I agree with you. Like, there's nothing that lights up. It's part of my work, but it lights up when you get to see girls engaging in STEM and thinking about their careers, and just how much energy and optimism, but also just like really fantastic ideas that they have. it does fuel that optimism. You think like, we're just going to be fine, actually, because there's lots of fantastic, folks who are coming up behind who are going to fill the gaps that we need filled. Finally?
I don't know if I'm optimistic as much as I'm delusional. I'm like, I think you have to have a good, healthy dose of delusion to be successful in anything. I watched a video about, what's his name? The guy who wrote Pulp Fiction. Yes, and how he was trying to be a filmmaker for like 10 years, and he kept failing and failing and failing, and most people would have given up by that point. And then he wrote Pulp Fiction, and they were like, it's because he was delusional. It's because even though he kept being shot down, he kept failing, he kept being rejected, he believed that he could be this wonderful filmmaker. So delusion over optimism any day.
Well, tomato, maybe, as opposed to. But yeah, you're right. You do have to kind of keep going, and whatever that is that feeds us to keep going and fighting these challenges is up for debate, maybe.
I do think delusion is also quite relevant to the exploration industry. I'm not throwing any shade, but you do have to be ready to walk in and have to like really give it your all, even when things don't seem they're going well. So I totally agree. Yeah.
We just have a few minutes left. Any last words? Final thoughts?
I think this is a great opportunity for Equiforce and the Women Apprentices to plug your, so they have this groundbreaking event coming, and I wish I had thought of it, and they need to get the word out, and people in here should share it.
Thank you for doing our promotion for us. Tanya, do you want to talk about it?
That's partnerships and collaboration right there, folks.
There you go. And neither one of us brought it up.
I'll start and certainly fill in the blanks. Yeah, so we did. The two of us, our organizations got together a while back, and we thought about how do we move the needle on allyship, right? How do we move the needle? How do we engage men in a meaningful way? And so we have a conference coming up on May 5th. It's called Shifting Gears. It's a one-day conference, and there's lots of food. And we have a great guest speaker who is coming in from an organization, a national organization called Next Gen Men. And the kicker is this conference is for men and for men only. So we have men who will be attending as participants. We have male panelists and male speakers, and we also have our male keynote. And so while we maybe have a hand in organizing this conference, we won't be in the room. And as somebody who likes to be very well prepared, that gives me no anxiety whatsoever. But if you are going to be in St. John's on May 5th, or you can convince your employer to send you to St. John's on May 5th, we are still accepting registration. And it really is an informal opportunity for men to come together in a room and chat about allyship and talk about inclusion. And we recognize that sometimes these conversations are really difficult to have. And, we just decided that we would put this out as an opportunity. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, well, we'll go back to the drawing board. We won't know what happens. We won't be in the room. So we're going to say it worked out fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity because, my work with industry, I think 99.9% of people are great and they mean well. Absolutely. And they're on board. And I think that most employers and organizations would be more than happy to have a great diverse workforce and hire women. But something that we see really often is that people are intimidated. They think, well, it could be a liability. I've never had a woman on site before. What if one of my staff harasses her? That's my organization's name on the line. Or I don't know anything about menstrual products. I don't know anything about women's PPE. So it's not that they don't want to show up. It's just, it's intimidating. And I get it because, as much as we joke around about our conversation being spicy, we do try to be kind. We're not here to judge anybody. We're not here to put anybody on the spot. And so when you are in situations like this, it can be uncomfortable to have an opinion, to speak up, to engage in a conversation. So that is why this conference is happening. Because like Tanya said, we will not be in the room. It will be all men, so safe space, say whatever you want, and no judgment, because that's how you learn, that's how you grow, that's how you figure it out, And so yeah, I have promo codes for some free tickets, so get at me.
Right, that's right.
I was going to say, because I've been in a bunch of different stuff that's like geared towards women, and last fall, maybe 18 months ago, I did a women in leadership course.
Yeah.
And so it's all women, and it's not a women leadership course. It was just a leadership course. But the audience was all women. And so we actually had a few different conversations because the woman who was putting it off, she was kind of like, I don't know if we really need it or if I should just keep doing a leadership course. But the conversations that we had, because it was only women, changed the dial, right? You're not having those same conversations when it's a mixed group. So I think that I wish we could be a fly on the wall and just see like what
Yeah.
those conversations look like when it's just men, because I think it will be very different.
Yeah, and I think it's just about creating space, right? There's opportunities when sometimes women come together, there's opportunities for men to come together, and then obviously there's times when we have really inclusive conversations, and that's fantastic. So it's not about one solution or one thing being the answer. It's about just creating a whole bunch of different opportunities for people to come together and really talk practically, sort of no bull, just get down to business and talk about, hey, like, how are we feeling here? What are the skills that we need? What do I say if, like, all of those pieces, just so for at a very practical level. So it's May 5th, and we have
Honestly,
the partner
sometimes even just validating that, hey, I was wondering about that too, right?
Right.
It's not a dumb question. You don't need to feel stupid. You don't need to feel like, oh, I'm not inclusive because I don't know the answer to this. There's lots of people that are wondering the same thing, so it's always a safe space to
Yeah,
just
it's
put it out
learning,
there.
right? We're all learning constantly. So I think that wraps up our time. It's 2:45. That makes my organized heart so happy, quite frankly. And just want to thank you all for coming up here on stage and having this conversation with us. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.